Welcome to Season 8 of Radio Free 501c, brought to you by Rogue Tulips Consulting. Don't forget to subscribe or follow us. We're in Season 8 and we still have a lot to talk about. Radio Free 501c is supported by USAE News, the weekly community newspaper of Association CVBs and hotels. Learn more at usaenews.com. Hey, March is Ethics Awareness Month, and this week my guest, Shawna Strickland, who is the Chief Learning and Engagement Officer at the American Epilepsy Society, is going to talk with us about ethical culture and how to establish and model it. It's Monday, March 16th, 2026. Welcome to episode 320. Hey, everybody. We are halfway through March, believe it or not. I can't believe it myself, but the first quarter is almost over, so I hope it's treating you well so far. Welcome to this edition of Radio Free 501c. I'm your host, Cecilia Sepp. I'm the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips Consulting, the primary sponsor for this podcast. And we are also just delighted to be partnering again with USAE News this year, who is our podcast partner and supporter for the entire year. So thank you, USAE News. And if you have not yet subscribed to USAE News, go check out their website and see if you'd like to. It's usaenews.com, very conveniently named, so and easy to remember. And also, speaking of subscribing, if you have not yet subscribed or followed Radio Free 501c, please do so when you get a moment. We're having so many wonderful conversations. I'm really excited about this week's conversation because it's part of our Ethics Awareness Month series for 2026. We have a first-time guest and one of my colleagues from the ASA Ethics Committee, and we're doing some other projects together too. I'm just really excited to have Shawna Strickland joining us, and we're going to be talking about establishing an ethical culture in our organizations. But before we do that, Shawna, welcome to the show. Would you like to say hello to the audience and tell us a little about yourself?
Hi, Cecilia. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here. So I'm Shawna Strickland. I'm the Chief Learning and Engagement Officer at the American Epilepsy Society, and we are located in Chicago. And like Cecilia said, I'm a member of the ASAE Ethics Committee.
And that's where Shawna and I met. And so we've been doing some work together the last few years. And it's very exciting work. It's also very fulfilling work, helping our colleagues understand ethics. And the best thing to do in most situations, unfortunately, we can't answer the question for every situation. But one of the most important things, and Shawna, I'm glad we're talking with you about this topic of establishing an ethical culture. You're very well respected in the area of ethics and well recognized by many people, and you do lots of presentations and writing on this topic. You're also, as you mentioned, at the American Epilepsy Society, you're in a leadership role there. So what are some of the things that you do at your organization to help establish and then maintain that ethical culture?
That's a really great question. Starting off, though, an ethical culture is really an environment where we consistently act with integrity, fairness, and accountability. So one of my actions that I try to do on a regular basis, and I encourage others to do, is to take that accountability loudly. I own my actions. I own the things that I talk about. I own my behaviors so that when something is, let's say, less than optimal, it inspires others to see you as a leader owning that mistake. I made an error. I made a mistake. I overlooked that. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I didn't know that, or I was unaware, or whatever. It's an easy way for you to demonstrate and model back that behavior of we're not blame and shame. What we're about is improving and overcoming bad processes. We're rarely bad people. It's usually a process failure that gets us into trouble. So acknowledging that that's the ownership of that specific area and coming back and making that right, that goes a long way in building trust. And quite frankly, that's what we're looking for, both internally and externally with our organizations, building something that people can trust in and that they can be a part of that fulfills them.
I really like that explanation. It also speaks toward psychological safety within an
Mhm.
organizational culture. So, could you speak to that aspect of having a strong ethical culture?
Yeah, it's something that we have to work on. That psychological safety is not an achievement like a Girl Scout badge that you have on your Girl Scout sash. Because I was also a Girl Scout. It's not an achievement, right? It's a journey. It is something that you have to work on every day. It's something that you work on with yourself. It's something that you work on with your team. It's something that you support your team as you work toward that psychological safety. Because again, that trust is our end goal. Trust is very easily lost, right? It only takes an action to lose trust in someone. It takes sustained effort to achieve and then maintain that trust moving on. So, asking yourself to reflect after interactions, what went well? What could have gone better? How could I have improved what I contributed to that situation? Is always a really great reflection for self. And again, as you model these behaviors, your team will then feel safer in having those behaviors as well. If I'm okay saying I made an error, I will fix it, and then I do, then the team is more likely to say, "Oh, I made a mistake, but Shawna's not going to be upset with me. We're just going to work through it and make it better and then figure out a way that that mistake doesn't happen again."
Yeah, and that's exactly how you build psychological safety. You have to model it, and it starts at the top. So you can't expect your staff to be ethical and responsible and accountable if we're not going to do that. So I think that is an excellent point. And psychological safety is something that has to constantly be supported and curated and advanced. Like you can't, like you said, I was kind of laughing when you said it's not a Girl Scout badge. I was a very successful brownie, but not a very successful Girl Scout. I'll just put that out there for the transparency. But it's also looking back on our life and in our career. We're talking about organizations, but every day we're having to make choices, and we look back to things we did when we're little kids and our young teens, and I also think about those things every once in a while and go, ugh, and feel really bad about myself. Like, oh, I can't believe I did that. That was so mean, or it was really irresponsible, and things like that. So that informs us as well, even at work. But when we're at work and we're in a culture like yours that focuses on ethics and psychological safety and modeling that behavior, how important do you feel it is to have some sort of I'm just going to say compliance program because that's a generally accepted term, but whatever that internal process is, those steps that a person might take when they have made a mistake and they need to bring it out?
Yeah, I think that that's a hard question because some mistakes are going to be very small. I go
Right.
to my one up. I made an error. This is the impact. I know what I did. I need to change the process, and this is how I'm going to fix it.
Mm,
And then we move on, right?
right.
Larger, bigger errors require something maybe a little more formalized, but again, some sort of a system that's fair, equitable, accessible to the team member, and again, isn't so scary that they're worried about raising something through that compliance system because they think they're going to get in trouble or be fired or be reprimanded or what have you, whatever that negative consequence is. So a person is not going to report something if they feel like I'm not going to be treated fairly. Nobody's going to take my complaint seriously. Everyone's going to blame me. Um, I'm going to get in trouble. Those types of things. So it's a balance of helping people accept that accountability, modeling that it's okay to accept that accountability, and then providing a pathway to reporting it that isn't focused on the negative consequence, but rather the resolution of the issue and then prevention of the issue going forward. I recall a time at a prior team, I have my no blame, no shame speech that I give people all the time. And um, one of the team members came to me and she shut my door and she said, "I'm putting my trust in you and I'm going to see if you are really going to hold to your word because I made a mistake. And I'll be honest, I didn't want to tell you, but you keep saying no blame and no shame." And so I said, "Hit me. Let's see what happens." And she told me about her mistake, and she did make a mistake. She told me exactly what the mistake was, why it happened, what process was problematic. And then she told me how she wanted to fix it. And I said, all right, let's fix it. And so we got through the situation, we fixed the problem, we changed the policy or the practice to make sure it didn't happen again. And about a week later, she came back and she said, "You have no idea how nervous I was to come and talk to you because I didn't really trust that that's what you were going to do. I really thought that there was going to be a big negative consequence versus focus on the problem and the problematic area." So it's not enough to just model. Sometimes people have to take a leap of faith, and providing that type of a work environment where people feel safe enough to test you and to take you up on your word, and then of course you follow up on your word. That's a really powerful moment.
Yeah. That's a great example because it does all start with trust, especially with the people we report to, because a lot of mistakes or ethical situations, the focus is on the punishment. And I think that humans, we're kind of trained toward that. Like if we think about that psychology story about warm fuzzies and sharp pricklies or cold pricklies, I'm sorry, warm fuzzies and cold pricklies, people would rather have the cold pricklies and get some attention than no attention. But I think we always think we're going to get in trouble. And I put that in quotes because nobody can ever explain to me what that actually means. People say, "Oh, I didn't want to say anything. I thought I'd get in trouble." Well, what does that mean? "Oh, I don't know. I just don't want to get in trouble." Well, if you don't know what trouble is, how do you think you're going to get in it? So it's much better to come clean rather than hiding things. And I like movies. That's one of my favorite things, and I like to analyze them and discuss them a lot. And one of the things that you might see in a movie, like gang related, is a mistake is made, a very serious, terrible mistake. And in case you haven't seen the movie, I won't say what it is, but the two people who make the terrible mistake keep hiding it, and they end up compounding the mistake and making it much, much worse because they've hidden it. And they're constantly scrambling to keep the mistake hidden. So it ends up coming out much worse in the end. And yes, they do get into quite a lot of trouble, but that's because they made it worse. And so really encouraging people to come forward. But also, Shawna, like the way you handled it, like, okay, you came in with a solution, let's just fix it. And I think more leaders need to take that attitude. Everybody's going to make mistakes. No one is perfect. And we need to model that as well. So we definitely need to continue to do that because the book, The Fearless Organization by Amy Edmondson, talks a lot about psychological safety. And one of the things that she focuses on is at a hospital where they actually make fewer mistakes because they feel very comfortable and confident in reporting them. So again, we're not compounding the mistake by not sharing it. We're saying, "Oh, this mistake happened and here's what I did to fix it," or "We need to find a solution." That's really important because, again, humans are imperfect beings, which is why we have things like ethics. So when it comes down to the ethical culture in an organization, Shawna, do you believe or feel or think or support that every organization should have a code of conduct for their staff?
Absolutely. I have said for years that failure to establish explicit and clear expectations sets us all up for failure. We have to know what is expected of us, what's expected in our role, what's expected of us when a problem hits, what's expected of us for basic behavior. I think that a lot of organizations do have codes of ethics, but they're for their members or their profession. So, for example, we're a professional organization. There are many professional organizations out there. They have a code of ethics that typically looks at the membership and how they should behave in their work environment, or what it means to be an ethical professional in that space. For example, ASAE, as you know, also has a code of standards that we follow as association professionals in general. But having a code of ethics or a code of conduct or whatever you want to call it for the staff team is a really great idea. Even more powerful if it is co-constructed. The best of these codes of ethics or standards that I've seen is when the group comes together and agrees internally that these are the norms that we value here at the organization, and this is how we agree that we're going to show up for each other. And that includes the integrity piece and operating with transparency and honesty, and really making sure that we're establishing a work environment that we all feel comfortable in. And I think that the challenge here is that we all come in with good intentions, and then there are environmental factors that are going to influence us in ways that we wouldn't have normally considered. I recall, I believe it is the ECI report that is published every few years. They submitted a report, I believe it was in 2021, that looked at it was a survey of business practices from across many sectors, not just nonprofits. And they compared their 2021 findings to their findings, and I believe it was 2017 or 2018. And the pressure to be less than ethical was felt in that survey was reflected more in the middle manager level than in the entry level employee or the chief staff executive role. Because of the environmental impact of the pandemic itself, pushing people to, how many times did we hear it during the pandemic? Do more with less, right? All of these various stressors that were felt more at that middle manager level. So these are folks who are probably very ethical, very transparent, very good at their jobs, and yet financial targets, deadlines, competitive environments, all kinds of pressures come in. And especially with the pandemic, when these were new pressures that we had never felt before, these were all things that influenced us to act in ways that perhaps folks wouldn't have considered acting.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the ECI study because I referenced that a lot. They haven't done an update since 2025.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking with somebody at ECI the other day, and they said they're not sure when that's going to start happening again, because their situation has changed. But in the 2025 study, they found that things had actually gotten a lot worse after the lockdown. People were still feeling that pressure to be unethical.
Mm-hmm.
They felt their organization and or manager was unethical, but they also felt that there was more retaliation when people did report unethical behavior. And that's a really serious problem, obviously, because people aren't going to report if they feel that they're going to get punished for it. So people feel they're going to get punished for making a mistake, and they feel like they're going to get punished for telling people that they see something wrong. And this where courage comes in with making ethical choices and taking ethical actions, is you have to have the courage to speak up and do what you know is the right thing and the best thing, especially within your code of conduct. And that's something we talk a lot about in the ethics course that I lead with Cheryl Ronk, who also says people support that which they help create, which is the point you've already made. And we always remind people of that. Don't just hand it to people and say, hey, here's your code of conduct. They have no investment in it. And that's what we really want to see. We want to see that investment. But the compliance side of things, as some people know, I have earned the certification from ECI in ethics and compliance. And if you've ever seen LPEC after someone's name, that's what that means, leadership professional in ethics and compliance. And they talk a lot about compliance. And compliance sounds like it's very much legalistic and punishment driven or something like that. But really, when you look at what compliance is within that area, it's making sure that people have that safety to come forward, that there is a formal process, they know who to talk to and how to get things moving. And that's why I am always going to be a supporter of having some sort of a process, whether it's arbitration or a true compliance process where somebody files a complaint or or it's dispute resolution, whatever it is. We have to have a way to address these things. And I find a lot of times that people just don't know what they've done is wrong. It's not even so much like I made a mistake and I'm afraid to bring it forward. They don't realize they did something wrong. So have you seen any examples like that anywhere, like in your own experience, or maybe you read about one somewhere?
Absolutely. That's called moral blindness. And it's usually due to desensitization. If this is something that has been a practice, or I saw my boss do it,
Mm,
or the focus is just so narrowed on outcomes and not the processes, that we get into this tunnel vision, and we
mm,
focus so much that we start to ignore the behaviors that we're making, basically. I my outcome is that I really want to get the word out about a product or a service or something. And I can put it out on my social media, maybe because I have access to my organization's social media, I can amplify the message as well. So instead of focusing on how the ethical process works, it's more about I've got to get the numbers, I've got to get these things out here, I've got to hit my targets, I've got to hit my deadline, and then we start taking shortcuts. And it's those shortcuts that tend to get us into trouble. So one of the first things I tell people is that they've got to hone their moral awareness. They've got to look around them, really look at how these processes are developed and implemented, and make sure that they follow some fairly basic trust actions.
mm. Well, we have to be able to trust the people that report to us as well as them
Mm-hmm.
trusting the people that they report to, or the leadership, as we like to call it. I think that's really an important thing to emphasize. And I think in bringing on new people into a team, that's something we can actually kind of screen for. We can ask them, well, what do you think of ethics? Have you ever worked somewhere with a code of ethics? Would you be comfortable working with a code of ethics? How would that look for you? And I think we can do that. I think we can ask people those questions because maybe they'll say, well, I've never worked at a place with a code of conduct, but I'm interested. And that shows the doors open, to
Mm-hmm.
educating people because everybody doesn't think the same. And so that's why, to your excellent point about setting expectations, we need to let people know, well, here at this organization, this is our expectation of behavior
Mm-hmm.
and what we're looking for. And I think, and I cannot overlook this opportunity, since we're both on the ASA Ethics Committee, to talk about some of the things that the committee does to help people and some of the tools that are available for ASAE members to help them build an ethical organization culture. So I'm going to throw it over to you, Shawna, and let you share some things that we're doing on the committee that people may be interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is March of 2026. It is Ethics Month, as Cecilia has said. And if you are not already there, you should absolutely go to the ASAE Ethics community on Collaborate, where we are having a fantastic discussion about a fairly complex situation that's going on in a fictional organization. I won't give away too much, but it's a really engaging activity of talking about not just what's happening in the situation, but what has happened in our own experiences. How would we approach something? What new information do we have? One of the challenges I think that many people have is that they don't understand. I'm going to walk that back. It's not that folks don't understand the importance of ethical decision making. Maybe they don't know where to start with ethical decision making. And having a decision making framework is really important. And to that, the ASAE Ethics Committee developed years ago an ethics toolkit. And this toolkit is refreshed upon occasion to bring it up to date with new factors and issues, new policies that we can share that organizations have given approval to provide out there as samples. This toolkit provides a decision-making framework that can be used on a regular basis. We all experience ethical dilemmas, ethical situations on a regular basis. Now you've got a toolkit at your hands to help you walk through in a systematic fashion how to make that decision, including getting all of the facts straight. And I think that that's one of the lessons in this scenario that we have on Collaborate is that we're getting pieces of information as the story unfolds throughout the month. And what are we doing with those pieces of information? What pieces of information are we missing? Because we always know that the initial story that we get, the initial complaint that we get, is half of the story. How are we going to get the whole story? Do we need the whole picture? Where are we going to get that information? And then once we have that information, what are we going to do with it?
Mhm.
What's the problem at hand? And what is the most ethically supported solution? And once we find that solution and we make that action, the most important step in my mind is on the back end, evaluating the process, evaluating the situation, and evaluating how that solution impacted the situation. And can we use that to then make policies or procedures to avoid this situation in the future? What was the problem with the situation? In the situation we have on Collaborate, we'll find out. So it's a nice fun activity that that's unfolding throughout the month, and I think has some really great nuggets of how to approach a situation, a very challenging situation with a lot of key invested parties that are affected. And I think that the activity is going to wrap up in a very interesting fashion. So stay tuned.
We don't want to give the ending away.
Not giving it away.
So, and that's absolutely right. We do need to investigate. We need to understand before we jump to conclusions. What do humans like to do? We always jump to conclusions. We see somebody do a thing and we make an assumption without having any idea what's going on. And I remember very early in my career, one of my epiphanies was when I realized just because senior staff is closing the door to the office doesn't mean they're talking about me. They could be talking about anybody else. And that just really showed me, just if it's about me, they'll come for me. They'll let me know if it's about me. But that's really the great thing about the ASAE Ethics Committee. If you're an ASAE member, you can go to Collaborate, you can go to the Ethics Committee, you can share your questions, you can share your situations, and the committee's here to help with guidance and sharing information. That's how I got interested in serving on the ethics committee, as I had an ethical dilemma and I went to the committee back in 2022 for guidance, and they helped me out a lot. And I thought, hey, this is really a great committee, I'm going to apply. And I was fortunate enough to get on, and I get to meet people like Shawna and get to learn even more about ethics and work with a great group of people. So we're here to help inform and educate everyone. So please check out these tools, check out the ethics community. We do have this 5-part series for the month of March, since it is Ethics Awareness Month. But every week, starting the week of April 6th, we'll be sharing another short scenario. They won't be standalone. They're not necessarily going to be a series, but just to get us thinking about, well, how do we handle situations? What would I do in this situation? And sharing some ideas for questions that you can walk through to help yourself make choices about when to speak up, when to take action. And sometimes there's an old saying, some days the bear eats you. And sometimes you have to know there's not a darn thing you can do about it. So that's a great thing to do. Now, if you're not an ASAE member, but you like to listen to this podcast, I am sharing the 5-part series for Ethics Month in my blog and in my e-newsletter, Rogue Speak, if you would like to check it out and see what we're talking about. Because without examples, without practice, we don't know what to do in the situation. And that's what's so important about scenarios. And we do scenario planning for strategy, but we need to have scenario planning for everything else we do, ethics, meeting events, whatever it is that's going on. So speaking of meetings, Shawna, sometimes people have codes of conduct for events, which are separate from a code of conduct for the members or a code of conduct for staff, or even sometimes organizations have a board code of conduct. So what's your opinion on having an event code of conduct?
I think they're really important. We get together as a group. Most of our associations have an annual meeting, if not many meetings, member meetings throughout the year. And having a standard of behavior at those meetings is just important. Again, it goes back to those explicit expectations with regard to behavior during the meeting itself, in a organization adjacent meetings or events that might happen. There are situations where perhaps our members are tempted to make bad decisions, and they need to know which of these bad decisions are going to result in some sort of consequence. We're all adults. We're going to make the decisions that we feel are best for us. But as an organization, we need to make sure that the behaviors that we accept in our personal meetings, whether they're board meetings or member meetings or committee meetings or whatever kind of an event it is, protects the safety of the members and the staff who are in attendance. We don't want anyone to feel unwelcome, unsafe. We don't want anyone to feel like they can't enjoy themselves and learn and connect and network without also giving up some aspect of safety, whether it's psychological safety or physical safety, emotional safety, whatever that is. So making sure that it's very clear what behaviors will be tolerated and which will not, and what those consequences are up front, as almost like a contract of, if you're going to be in this space, you agree to behaving in this professional manner, is really important. It's Nobody likes to get the complaint that somebody perhaps over imbibed and made some bad decisions. And at the same time, we also want to make sure that if it's an educational meeting, that we don't have somebody who's a heckler or disrespectful to the presenter or disruptive of the event or any kind of bullying behavior, those types of things. So I personally think that the more we can provide that expectation out there before the folks even show up on site, the better.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really good point. Promote it well before the event actually happens, because there can be, we've all seen it. Sometimes we've been the cause of it, bad things happening or unethical things happening. But of course, Shawna and I have never done that because we're on the ethics committee. We've never caused a problem. But seriously, we're all going to get caught up in situations, but knowing what's expected of us, as you said, Shawna, and making it clear well in advance is very important. But also, I think empowering people to act on that code of conduct is really important too. So if I'm going to an event and I know what the code of conduct is, I should feel empowered by that code of conduct to take an action if I need to. Whether it's intervening in an incident, like I see somebody getting bullied, so I feel that I can intervene, or knowing who to go to. Maybe there's designated people that you can go to for assistance. Maybe they're trained in how to handle it, or they've been given more authority to handle a situation. So I think that's a really important thing to do, not just at work, but when we're out in the world at events.
Yeah, and I think that the most effective of those code of conducts for events will have a telephone number or an email or somebody, a location in that meeting where if you see something or if you experience something, this is where you can report these things. And then on the staff side, making sure that the staff knows how to escalate these issues, because even though that information might be out there, email this email address or call this number or go to the registration desk and ask for this person, it's also very tempting to just stop the first staff person you see and say, something just happened and I'm uncomfortable. And that staff person may not be equipped to handle that complaint. So it's important for everybody on staff to know, if you get a complaint, immediately escalate it to this person who will come to you and the member and relieve you so that that member can have their situation addressed.
Yeah. And I know we could all tell stories.
Mm-hmm.
I've thought of
Yeah.
several just talking with you right now of the different things that I've seen over the years. I'll just be upfront about this. What kind of makes me different from other people is I will say something. I will go up to somebody and say, hey, I think this person's had enough to drink. It's not funny to make them drunker. Things like that. And that is something we all have to be comfortable doing. And if you're not comfortable doing that, you shouldn't do it, because you're going to put yourself at risk. And that's what's the most important thing to me about handling situations where there's several people involved and it's an ethical dilemma, somebody is misbehaving, we need to get help. We can't do it by ourselves, and you should definitely not try to handle it if you're not comfortable doing it. You should do what Shawna said and find that designated person to help you get assistance. One of my favorite episodes was, I call it, it happened in the produce department. And I saw a woman being harassed by this man that she didn't know, and he wouldn't leave her alone. And he wouldn't let her pass. Every time she tried to walk around him, he would block her path. So I saw one of the grocery store employees, and he was a real big guy, looked like he maybe played football or something at some point in life, really big guy. And I just yelled across the produce section, "Excuse me, do you have a security department? This woman needs assistance." And I yelled as loud as I could. And he just came over and went like this and crossed his arms and looked down at the guy who was much shorter than him and said, "Is there a problem here?" And that guy ran out so fast. So I didn't confront the man. I asked for help. And that's a really good example of what we should do. We shouldn't try to handle it by ourselves. It's ethics is a team sport. Even
Absolutely.
Yeah. So even though we have to act individually, yes. So, and that's what we are at the ethics committee at ASAE. We're a team, and we're here to help you, again, educate, support you, and be a place where you can have a sounding board. And if you want to speak to somebody confidentially on the committee and get some insight, please contact our staff person at ASAE, and she can guide you toward one of our leaders who can give you some confidential guidance as needed. Because that's what I did years ago. I went to the leadership, got some confidential guidance. So, well, Shawna, I know you and I, because we love ethics and we work on it a lot, we talk about it a lot. We probably go on for much longer about this topic of ethics, but I want to thank you for sharing all your insights and advice on how to create an ethical organization culture and then maintain it, because that's the most important part, is maintaining that culture once it's established. So, you saw at least one of the podcast episodes. I know I like to ask my guests, what is the one thought you would like the audience to take away today? And how can they get in touch with you if they might want to ask you some more questions about this topic?
Yeah, I'm always happy to talk. As Cecilia said, I could go on for many more hours talking about ethics. I think that the one thing that I would leave the audience with is consistency. Being consistent in how you show up for your team and how you show up for your members is going to go a long way in establishing that trust. Acting with integrity, acting with consistency and fairness is going to help inspire that culture that you want to cultivate, so that your team feels comfortable with you, feels safe with you, and they feel comfortable using the behaviors that you are also modeling with them. It doesn't help if you're not consistent in how you present yourself and your own leadership. And I am happy to talk with anyone. I'm on Collaborate with ASAE. I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me these days. And I am happy to connect with anyone who'd like to talk further.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Shawna. You gave us just a great overview of how to do this at our own organizations.
Thank you.
Well, we have to go rogue for now, but we'll be back next time with another exciting episode and conversation like this one. So you can find this episode featuring Shawna and her view on ethics and how to implement them at your organization on our podcast page, roguetulips.com/podcast. Very easy. We try to keep it easy to find things. Find this episode, share it with your friends and colleagues, and have a conversation about how you can make your organization more ethically aware. If you'd like to learn more about what we do on the consulting side here at Rogue Tulips Consulting, check out our services page right on our website, roguetulips.com, and then let's have a conversation. If you're looking for ethics education, we do offer an ethics course most months of the year. You can find that schedule on our education page. We also are open for our CAE prep course through March 18th for registration. So if you're getting ready for the May exam and you haven't signed up for a class yet, don't panic. You can still join ours. We also have a Lead Forward Initiative Adaptive Leadership course. Check that out too, and see how that might help you with your professional development. And finally, you might want to check out our blog and see what's on my mind this week because, frankly, I don't know what I'm going to talk about most of the time either. So check that out as well. And if you have not yet subscribed or followed us, one more reminder, please follow us on your favorite service so you don't miss any of these conversations. We are well past the 300 episode mark, so there's still a lot to talk about. Thanks for joining us this week. And on behalf of Shawna and myself, we'll see you next time. That's it for this week. I hope you really loved this episode as much as I did. Thanks for listening. Learn more about how our experience and knowledge at Rogue Tulips can give your organization the strategic edge to reach its goals. Check out our website at roguetulips.com. We'd love to talk with you and see how we can work together.